to yet another episode of Smash the Bug. I am your host, Joseph Maxwell. Today we have a very special guest. His name is Shawn Abramson from Adobe. We're going to hear from him as far as some of the challenges he's worked through and how, most importantly, how he has worked through those challenges. If you haven't already, make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel, Swift.Order Inc., or go to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify. Look up the Smash the Bug podcast there so that you can continue to get this great content as we are bringing some of the smartest people in the industry together to share their knowledge, what they've fought through, what they've learned, how they've learned it to make you a better developer. So without further ado, I would love to introduce Shawn Abramson, technical architect at Adobe. Welcome, Shawn. It's a pleasure to have you part of the show here.
Thank you. And thanks so much for having me on. I appreciate it. I'm a technical architect at Adobe. Been there since May.
Okay.
And it's kind of a continuation of what I've been doing the last few years, which is technical architecture. Previously, I was working at MRM Commerce, which many of you probably know as Apteros. In the same role, doing pretty much the same thing. Just now I'm on cooler projects.
Oh, really? That's awesome. Well, of course you can't see the names, but that's really cool. So let me ask you this from this perspective: has the technical specs changed? So, like, is it bigger projects or more difficult projects, or is it pretty much the same style? It's just more interesting brands, if you will.
I would say that of the two projects I'm on right now, one of them is very similar to what it was previously, but the other one is kind of a beast, and it incorporates many different Adobe products. So not just Adobe Commerce, but also Adobe Analytics and AEM, Adobe Experience Manager, a whole bunch of different products offered by Adobe. And so even though Magento is owned by Adobe, these things don't just naturally integrate out of the box. So there's just a lot of considerations too. So it's pretty interesting because you get to get into new stuff, things that you only kind of got to peek at before, and now I get to be directly involved with.
Very interesting. Now, one thing I'm curious about, is Adobe actually writing code, or are you just providing like technical direction and architecture to agencies or in-house developers at these different merchants?
Yep. No, it's a great question. Both, actually. Okay. So we do have our own in-house Adobe developers located both in the U.S. and various other countries. And then we also oversee some agencies that also do, like, for example, the bigger project I was just describing. So we have a contracted outside agency, and we provide technical oversight for them. And, code reviews, stuff like that, architecture, integration planning, all that kind of stuff. And don't get our hands nearly as dirty on those kinds of projects.
Interesting. Okay. Well, very good. So as a architect at Adobe working on the Adobe Commerce platform, what does your day-to-day work look like? What does it mean to be an architect at Adobe?
Sure. The typical day isn't too different than, or at least the beginning of the day isn't too different than when I was a developer, which is the morning's generally booked with scrums and planning meetings, stuff like that. But then as the day goes on, much of my day is spent with direct communications with the clients over, video calls and phone calls, conference calls, doing code reviews. I live inside of New Relic. I'm constantly watching the app decks and the errors and, transaction times and all that kind of stuff, estimating tickets, and also just talking with the internal team about different tickets that they're working on. So sometimes it's providing mentorship, sometimes it's giving them a better way to do something. So my day isn't fully comprised of architecture-related tasks. I would say that's only really a small percentage of the time. Most of the time, it's the day-to-day stuff, preparing for releases, assisting QA, assisting the client with UAT sometimes. That kind of stuff. And then the architecture, it's pretty much the architecture stuff really enters the picture when there's a new feature that the client wants to do, or it's time to rethink or maybe re-implement an old feature. That's when the architecture duties kind of kick in, and that's that. It's a percentage of the time.
Very good. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. So, kind of following in line with that, what would you say has been your biggest challenges over the past year? Like the most difficult situation that you had to just really think through to get it out, or to get past this problem?
Sure. Actually, my biggest one in recent memory it's a doozy. I had to fly to Tokyo to solve it, so that was kind of fun. But
interesting. Okay.
It's a custom made-to-order Japanese suit maker, and so there were a lot of different challenges with this particular product because not only are we dealing with a massive language barrier, there was only a few people on the Japanese team that actually spoke English, and those that did speak English, it was limited. So we had some communication, difficulties that we had to work through. But it was also our first PWA project. And also we were dealing with a daily feed containing millions of rows in CSVs that we would import from an external system they didn't really have a concrete structure to all this data, and it really drove their catalog. So this particular site only uses a Magento product for the shell, and the product itself is actually comprised of all of this loosely structured data that changed a lot. And a lot of times when it changed, it wasn't necessarily in the same format that we had written code for. So there was really a lot of difficulties to kind of understand the data. There was no one particular person that really had ownership of the structure and the format of the data. So you could ask 3 different people and get 3 different answers. And so we just had to work really hard to figure out how are we going to import this data daily? How are we going to adapt to changes? And how are we going to, continually improve upon the site? Because that's just phase 1, right? Then you have phase 2, phase 3, new product lines, stuff like that. And it was a challenge.
So let's talk about the CSV and how you adapted for some of those situations. Like, it seems to me like almost an impossible deal when you have like, see, the idea behind a successful CSV is it has to be structured, and then that structure has to be maintained. But if we start straying from that, it seems pretty difficult to even create a level of moldability or an adaptability with that. So how can you talk about how you worked through some of those challenges?
Sure. I mean, the main thing was to spend some time with myself and then my boss at the time, who was the chief architect, and then another technical architect. And, it was really a teamwork effort. We put our heads together and just tried to really understand what each piece of data in each file was and determine what we need and just kind of whittle it down to the bare minimum that we need to take from that file. Actually, one of the things we did is once we gained an understanding and we had the client sign off, and we basically had to ask them to promise to agree to give us 30 days notice of any changes to the data in the future, because they had changed it a few times and the site did break a couple of times, expectedly so. So we asked them to give us 30 days notice. Even with the 30 days notice, we still ran into difficulties because as they launched new product lines, the way that the data from the different files, and so files in this case are kind of synonymous with database tables, right? Because they just get imported directly into the database. Okay. The way they related to each other was different. So we couldn't use foreign keys in these tables. Yeah. And we made it work somehow. Maybe it's a house of cards, but we understood, we gained an understanding of the data. Anytime something changed, we just would call a meeting with the client and hope that we get somebody who understands the data better than us to help us understand it better.
Yeah, well, that'd be somewhat the challenge, because you guys are probably in that data all day long, and you guys get pretty familiar with it. So that some of those conversations can be difficult. I understand.
Yes,
figuring
especially with the language barrier,
and that would make it all the more difficult. Absolutely, yeah. And then figure out solutions. So yeah, that sounds like you had your work cut out for you on that project.
Indeed.
Wow. That would be interesting. What was your experience implementing PWA? Like from your perspective, how did that go?
Actually, it's quite enjoyable. So what I've kind of noticed over the years, and you kind of really get a different feeling for different developers. And what I noticed is that over the years, some developers never really want to leave their comfort zone, meaning that they're not big fans of the native Magento front end, right? So layout XML and maybe the fallback system for some different files, and what's the benefit of trying to find a way to not override a template, stuff like that, right? And so that's kind of been a difficulty over the years, where you've got some people who are just Magento fiends that just absolutely love it and master it and do really well. And then you have others, like I was describing, that just don't get out of their comfort zone. So when we went over to PWA, which is a fully decoupled front end, I found that all of the developers, at least the ones that knew React.js, because that's what we used, they really tended to excel because they weren't really bound by a set of rules of the Magento front end.
Interesting.
And I felt like, it was a little bumpy to start. We brought in Jisse Reitsma to kind of provide some training to the developers on PWA's first project, just to give us kind of a boost to get started. But then once everybody kind of got into their groove, we really kind of sailed along in terms of PWA, and it was faster development life cycle. But then also for the developers, it's much faster too. With native Magento front end, you could be waiting sometimes 30 or 60 seconds.
Oh yeah,
for a freaking page reload. Whereas with PWA,
I hate that. Yeah, pretty
instant. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, that's great. I'm looking forward to digging more into PWA, and just because I love the idea. Yeah, so that's really cool. I'm glad to hear that. PWA seems to be a great product, and unfortunately, I haven't had an actual opportunity to get into it, but looking forward to when that does happen. Do you have another challenge you want to talk about? As far as something that been pretty difficult over the past year that you had to fight through?
Sure. Actually, it was that same Japanese custom suit maker. So after we launched phase one, we were requested that we bring their e-commerce into China. Now, doing e-commerce in China, as we were to learn, comes with its own set of complications and rules. And one of the big rules is that all of the customer data, it's not allowed to leave the country. So we were building a WeChat app on the front end with a Magento backend.
Okay. And
Magento was hosted on cloud, US based. So we weren't allowed to bring that customer data into the Magento database from China. So we had to build an anonymization system in conjunction with our Chinese teammates. And so the back end is full of a bunch of orders with meaningless names and numbers, and just lists, measurements, and price. And that's pretty much it.
So then how would the data, you have to do fulfillment. So is it fulfilled in China itself?
It was actually fulfilled. It depends. They have some factories in China, and they have some factories in Japan. So it would really depend on the products that were ordered. So some items would go from Japan to China, and other things would be manufactured in China and ship within China as well.
Okay.
So I don't really know how the Japanese side dealt with the data, but I just know that on the US side, we couldn't even be exposed to customer names, customer addresses, phone numbers, payment information, nothing. The only thing we could really store would be measurement data and products and the prices paid.
Wow.
It was pretty interesting, and it worked out in the end, but it was just, it was a very unique issue that I've not had to face before.
That would be unique. So they would enter, how did the process work? We have WeChat, you said, on the front end. And was that how they actually purchased their product, through WeChat?
Yep, exactly. So the WeChat, it was a WeChat e-commerce app.
Okay.
And the company I was with before, Aptaros, so we had an office in China. And so the Chinese side was responsible for building out the WeChat app. And we would have to have to create and expose new endpoints for them to call over API. So mostly GraphQL API endpoints that we would just build out for them, and they would just call into it and mostly retrieve data that's pretty much all they were doing is just retrieving data for the most part.
Okay. So then would WeChat anonymize this data themselves before pushing over to Magento, or once it hits Magento, like calling the REST order create or the post, and like, how did that process work?
There was anonymization taking place in China because it can't cross that border before being anonymized. So yeah, we were receiving it anonymized.
Okay. Wow. That would be that'd be kind of tricky, actually, working through even troubleshooting stuff on the back end when you have kind of nothing to work with. Although I guess it is just characters, so maybe that would work out okay.
And that may be the case, but I moved over to Adobe right towards the end of that.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, okay. Very good. That's interesting. Wow, that would be an interesting challenge, definitely. Wow. All right, so you have a solid track record. Like, you've been doing development for 10 years plus, 11 years, something like that. So what would you say to other developers, especially maybe junior developers or people who are just starting out? What would your advice be to them, or i.e. yourself 10, 15 years ago, however long it was, as you were starting out, or just as they are now starting out? What would you wish you could have said to yourself back then?
Well, the biggest piece of advice that I would have given to myself at that time is don't work in a bubble. Talk to other people doing the same thing. There's a lot of people out there smarter than me then and now. And it just makes all the sense in the world to just talk to other people, people with experience. And sometimes just a fresh set of eyes also can just give you some good insight or a new solution to a problem. And, also just stay up on reading when you have nothing to do. Read a book or read some articles online, something tech related, something that's at least related to maybe the platform you're working on or the language that you code in, something like that. Just fill your time with something useful. And then the other thing that really isn't advice I'd give to myself, because generally speaking, I've always been, at least I think I'm pretty humble, is one thing I've seen over the years, and sometimes it's a cultural thing and sometimes it's just a developer thing, maybe developer culture, is don't let ego get in the way of learning more, because definitely I've encountered some developers who think they know it all, and that's a great way to stop your career progression dead in its tracks. Always assume that there's smarter people out there, and you want to gain the knowledge that they have.
Very well put. Yeah, I in a podcast a couple months ago, one of the people, and I don't remember who it was, Survey maybe, I don't remember. He said, always live as if you're a junior developer, no matter what rank you are. Always approach problems as if you're a junior, meaning curious, wanting to learn, wanting to get in there. And I thought I think that embodies what you're talking about there. It's just that humility and being willing to be corrected, or code reviews. We had someone sign on recently in our company, and a really sharp dude, like really sharp. And one of the things I was excited about is the code reviews. And he kind of was a bit brutal on one of my reviews, like very kindly, but he definitely took a red pen to it. But it's really good. Like it's a fresh perspective on that stuff, and I guess it does take a degree of humility to be able to accept new ideas and all that stuff. But that's how you learn. That's how you grow.
Yeah. And in that situation, it's natural to feel a little bit defensive because, hey, it's my code, it's my art.
Yeah.
Right. And, I can't say that I've never felt defensive about some things that came up on my own code reviews, especially when I was more junior. But the fact is that if you kind of put that thought and put that defensiveness out of your mind and realize, hey, maybe this person's saying this for a reason, you will move forward in your career. You will get better at what you do.
That's right.
It might take a minute for the light bulb to go off over your head for you to realize what this person was trying to communicate to you in the pull request. But
that's right.
Just be humble, and you'll learn.
Yes, totally agree. Absolutely, totally agree. I think that's good. Very good advice. Shawn, thank you for coming on and sharing your experiences, your learnings, and wish you the best in your career at such a awesome, cool company as Adobe, and wish you the best and hope you just tackle the most awesome, cool projects here as long as you're there and whatever you're working on.
Awesome. Thanks, Joseph.
Thanks
for having me on.
Yes. Wow, what a pleasure it was to have Shawn here. Definitely had a great conversation. It sounds like some interesting challenges that he had to work through, but I appreciated through that process he didn't stop, had to have open lines of communication. Remember that CSV problem? I mean, again, CSV is like, those have to be structured data. If you're not getting structured data, boy, that's a big bit of a monkey wrench in the whole plans there. But you gotta stick with it, gotta focus, communicate, and some good lessons there. So definitely a good conversation. Until next time, I hope you have a wonderful week and look forward to more great episodes coming out on Smash the Bug.